But, Mark, let's move on into those Atlanta Falcons that we were talking about at the end of the last segment that we had. And basically with this one, I just want to ask you a simple question. This is an Atlanta Falcon team rushed out of the gate, beating the Bears, beating the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, and beating the Lions, basically beating the NFC North minus my Vikings. They're 0-3 in their last 3. Couldn't beat the Bills, couldn't beat the Dolphins. Obviously, we know they can't beat the Patriots. They're 0-2 in their last 2 attempts at the Patriots. Sorry for the little stab there, Falcon fans. So this team beats the NFC North, loses to the NFC East. What's wrong with the Falcons, Mark? Tell me what is wrong with this Falcon team.
Here's the big thing that I kind of see when I'm looking at the Falcons. One, it's that, the defense has been all right. The offense has been all right as well. Nothing's really that wrong. When you just start to look at the teams, they're getting enough rushing yards, they're getting enough passing yards. A big thing that I see, a big glaring issue, and I don't want to put everything on Matt Ryan here because I think that's unfair.
Well, he's not Super Saiyan this year.
Yeah, but the big issue that I see, only against Detroit has he scored more than 1 touchdown. He's only thrown 1 touchdown a game. And the big thing about the Atlanta Falcons last year was they could put up more points than you. That's really what it was. They didn't care if you could put up points because they can put up more. He's thrown 7 touchdowns in 6 games, 6 interceptions in 6 games. Now, to be fair, all of those interceptions came against Detroit and Buffalo, with the exception of 1 in Miami.
You telling me Eddie Jackson didn't have any week 1?
No, unfortunately, he wasn't ready to go yet. But, it's just this kind of, he's not getting it done. And the running game is not as effective as it was last year.
Thank you. That was the one thing, after I emailed you the topics, I'm like, I'm gonna look up a little research on the Falcons. And I was looking at the numbers for Deonta Freeman. And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, his numbers aren't through 6 games last year, they're not that far off. Maybe he has a few less yards, 100 less yards this year, but touchdowns, yards, he's fairly similar. But it just seems like this year they're not running the ball with that same explosiveness that they had last year. Maybe that's the offense as a whole, that they're not they're not as explosive offensively overall as they were a year ago.
Sure, and Tevin Coleman, of course, too, last year having over 500 yards certainly is a help as well. But you have a guy in Freeman who's getting over 1,000 yards, but a big thing too is 11 touchdowns. He's had 5 touchdowns so far this season. Tevin Coleman, who last year had 8, only has 1 touchdown so far, and we're not far from halfway through the season.
And that is indicative of the team as a whole, because right now they are 16th in points scored with 21.3 on the average through 6 games for them because they've had their bye?
Yeah, to me, when I look at this Falcons team, it's not necessarily that there's any big thing wrong. And I think that if anybody's going to sit there and tell you they know exactly what is wrong with the Falcons, they're lying to you. You can't sit here and look at this team that's doing well and who had beaten the Lions and the Packers, 2 teams that at the time were playoff caliber teams because the Packers still had Aaron Rodgers, and lost to teams like the Dolphins and the Bills and almost lost to the Chicago Bears, but didn't. You can't sit here and pinpoint exactly what is wrong with this team right now. It's just, on paper, they shouldn't be in as bad of a spot as they really are. And you look at these games, and that Dolphins game, they lost by 3. They lost by a touchdown to the Bills. The Patriots game is really the only game that they were just completely out of it.
Let's pump the brakes, though, because the thing about that Dolphin game, that, they only lost by 3, but you were up 20-0 in that game. There's no excuse. I'm sorry. The whole, you only lost by 3, or 17-0.
Yeah, 17.
I looked at the Dolphin number. You were up 17-0 in that game, and you let Jay Cutler come back. I'm sorry.
Hey, the guy can.
I had faith.
Hold on.
Wait.
The guy is a comeback machine.
I had Jay Cutler. I had faith in him, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I had them as a playoff team, so I want to throw that out there.
Jay Cutler is one of the most talented comeback machines in the NFL.
But we know what we like.
Yeah.
Jay's the kind of guy.
We know what
when
he
you
is.
Believe
A
in
comeback
him,
machine.
When you believe in him, he lets you down. But when you don't believe in him,
and who believed in him when it was a
a
17-0 losing spot for the Dolphins? He's a comeback machine.
I'm just saying, like, there's
I don't
no
think you
like
can completely knock the Falcons.
That Atlanta team should have.
They should have.
Jay Cutler, they should have won that game.
Oh, of course.
Also, you got to look at this. The Bears game for sure.
They almost lost that game.
If Mitch Trubisky's in that, I'm saying it. If Mitch Trubisky starts that game, the Bears win. The Bears win. It came down to one catch.
Yeah.
One catch that, I mean, you can blame Glennon. You can blame the receiver for not catching it. Atlanta should have lost that game. You look at the Packer game as well. That one was probably the one
they took
that
one
was
over.
out of reach. But that had a little bit of emotion behind it. And then you look at the Lion game of it was 17-13, the closest that the Lions got. It was actually tied at the end of the third, 23-23. And then basically the Falcons score a touchdown and the Lions get a field goal. And then there was no scoring for the last, 11:40 of that game. So, I mean, that was another game to where if maybe the Lions and Matt Stafford do a few things different, I'll give the Bear game for sure should have been a loss. The Lions game could have been. This team is so close to only being a one-win team. I know they're not. I know the shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Well, I think that's a big part of it is just the fact that they're not scoring like they did. You know?
And you want to know why they're not scoring like they did? I'm not putting blame, and this isn't me saying like this is what's wrong with the Falcons, but it's when there's smoke, there's fire. You're not scoring as many points. We didn't really change much on offense. Oh, wait, we have a new offensive coordinator, which is Sarkisian. And I know Sarkisian came in, he said, it ain't broke, I'm not going to fix it. But there's one problem, Sark. You're not Kyle Shanahan. You can't just step into something that is someone else's and say, I'm going to do it. Because I feel like with Sark, there's not, and Peter King on Cowherd said it perfectly on Monday, there's just no coaching going on with Sark like there was last year with Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan.
And you just kind of look at this, at the stats from last year for Matt Ryan, and 38 touchdowns is an anomaly in his career. He has only one other time gotten above 30. That was in 2012. And if we all remember, 2012 was a great year for the Falcons. Many people thought they could have won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So without a doubt, that's a good comparison there. But 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's thrown 6 interceptions this year.
Through 6 games. So he's averaging an interception a game.
I think, they've played 7 games.
They had a bye week 5.
Yeah. So it's just one of these, it's not clicking right now. And
I don't think it's going to get better.
Hold the phone here, Ricky. And that's a weird thing for me to say, and it felt weird when it was coming out of my mouth. But do we go ahead and say the Super Bowl's in their heads?
Yes.
I mean, is that as simple as it is? That they just aren't over it?
You want to know why I think that? And yet again, I am referencing Peter King when he was on Cowherd on Monday because he said it perfectly. There was a play from this past Sunday night game where it was like 4th and something. I think it was like 4th and short.
4th and 7?
Yeah, no, it was 4th and like really short, or maybe the 4th and 7. Where
at the very beginning of the game, they had
that was
4th
it,
and
the
7.
4th and 7. And Peter King's like, punt the ball. Just punt it. But after the game, Dan Quinn said, we are an aggressive team. This is how we play. And like he said, you're playing right into Belichick's hands. If you're going to be like that, you're playing right into it. You have to make better.
You got to get it. Yeah.
You got to make better coaching decisions of, hey, if it's 4th and 7, let's punt the ball, live to see another down. Not, hey, go for it. If we don't get it?
I actually liked that call.
See, I didn't.
I did because it's early in the game. You're trying to keep Brady off the field. If it works, it's smart.
But if it doesn't work, you gave Brady phenomenal field position.
You did. that's kind of, unfortunately, that's a risk you got to take
And
sometimes.
that's why
I have no problem with that risk.
And that's why with Tom, because Tom Brady's on the other side, I am not going to give him phenomenal field position. I am going to trust my defense that early in the game. That's why, like, when Peter King said it, I'm like,
to me, it's just
you read my mind.
To me, it's something like that. I think Tom Brady scores like nobody's business.
Yeah, then why give him phenomenal field position?
Because he's going to score anyways, so let me get ahead of him, is my thought.
I see, and I'm on the other side, where especially against the Patriots. But I do, going back to what you said, the Super Bowl might be in their head. And the interesting thing is, though, they started off 3-0. And I know that Bear game. The Bear game, like I said, probably should have been the Bears. If the Bears weren't the Bears week 1, they probably could have won that game.
Any receivers with hands.
And it's funny how they play the Packers, come out like gangbusters and be like, yeah, we're going to beat you like we beat you last year. But then it's like you play the Patriots and it's like you forget how to score. Only 7 points against the Patriots, and this Patriot defense is worse than it was last year.
I feel like this team kind of doesn't know who they are in a way right now.
So no identity?
And it's not even completely that they don't have an identity. It's that they're not who they were last year, and then they start to doubt themselves and start to ask questions and start to be concerned for themselves. You know, it's just this very team that feels lost in a way. You win 3, then you lose 3, and 2 of those games you would have thought, looking at the schedule, were easier games to win.
You know, it's really funny, too. If they lose this week, they'll be 0-4 against the AFC East.
That'd be fun.
Because they're going to be in New York to play the Jets.
And, you know, you look at the schedule, and they got to play the Jets, and they got to play the Panthers. Both of those are away games, but teams that, you know, have a lot of question marks.
However, after that, I mean, I'm sorry, from week 11 to week 16, you're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who
twice.
I will say that's probably on the easy scale of these, I'm pushing those to the easy side only because it's not like a walkthrough, but it's the easiest out of the rest of the opponents.
But they're divisional games.
The Saints this year have played a lot better, so they're not exactly what I thought they would be in the preseason. But then you've got the Vikings, you get them at home, but then you have Seattle on the road, and Dallas, it's at home, but we don't know what Dallas team is going to show up, the one that played against Green Bay or the one that played against the lowly 49ers.
Yeah. And, of course, there's always the Zeke Elliott conversation there. And
will he be
what's
there?
that going to be? Yeah, so it's just this huge question mark right now for Atlanta. And unfortunately, it looks like, you know, there's a good chance they can miss the playoffs right now.
Well, they're out of the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and a good chance they don't bounce back because the back half of the schedule is the hard half. They really needed to go and win at least 6 of these first 7 games, possibly being able to lose to the Packers or the Patriots. Because, like I said, the back half is so difficult right there that it's not going to get any easier. The good thing for the Falcons, Saints are 4-2, 4-3 Carolina. Then they're 3-3, and then the 2-4 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are right in the thick of this division. This division is anybody's game.
Well, for right now, they're in the thick of it.
Well, of course, we're talking about right now.
I mean, the only thing that scares me about this week is you've lost 3 straight. You've lost the teams that you should have beaten, and the Jets. I mean, Jet fans continually let me hear how wrong I am, but the Jets have played a lot better than everyone thought they would. Of course, I had them 0-16.
Yeah, I don't know why you did that.
But everyone, it wasn't like everyone was far in front of me.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's important to look at, too, is when you look at just the 2 numbers that honestly matter more than anything else, points for and points against. They are right in the thick of it in almost all of that with one exception. When it comes to points against, New Orleans has given up 133, 139 to Carolina, 132 for Atlanta. They're in better shape than those other 2 teams that are ahead of them. Points for, New Orleans is the exception. They're at 171. But 131 for Carolina and then 128 for Atlanta. They are right in the thick of it. That represents this division of everybody is right there. And that's just boiling it down to 2 really simple numbers, which I know you can't just boil it down to 2 really simple numbers, but I think that it's worth saying that their defenses are pretty on par and the offenses are pretty on par. And they got to play Matt Stafford. They got to play Aaron Rodgers. They got to play Tom Brady. That is difficult. Of course, they're giving up a lot of points because they're playing 3 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Well, and the thing that I mean, it's
not
gonna
that
be,
they won't play more good ones, but still.
Of course, we've got to see what happens. But the thing, though, that with the Saints, which I think will be the biggest component to them.
Well, right now, yeah, the Saints, this is their division
because they're
right
at the top. And I feel like with the struggles of Matt Ryan in this offense, that even if the Falcons do find a way to score more than 21 points, I think Drew Brees will score more. Like, you look at the game, like, with the Saints so far this year, you get blown out by the Vikings in Minnesota. You get blown out by the Patriots in week 2. Then ever since, you blow out Carolina 34-13. You win 20-0 in Miami. You win a shootout against Matthew Stafford where you score 52 points in that game at home. That was in the Superdome, though. And then you score 26 against Green Bay. Like, this is an offense right now in their last 4 that feels like they're really feeling it with their lowest points scored against Miami on the road in Miami. And, I mean, you look at what they have coming up. Chicago, I think they, depend. Chicago's an interesting team. I thought they would lose this last week after beating the Ravens, but I feel like they can put up points against Chicago. I think they can put up points against Tampa Bay. Buffalo's a question for me. Washington's a question, although look at what Carson Wentz was able to do. The Rams' defense is a question, but then after that, really the only one that you look at is Atlanta. And if through before week 13, if the Saints can win the majority of those games, I think this is the part of the schedule where if the Falcons aren't on and lose some, the Saints pull away.
Yeah, I definitely think that the Saints kind of are in control right now.
Like you said, it's theirs to lose.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting, I think, at least most interesting for me when I look into Matt Ryan, is just the fact that really this is a pretty average Matt Ryan season. I mean, last year's season was phenomenal, but he typically is going to throw you, anywhere between 14, 17 interceptions a year. So nearly an interception a game. Right now, he's on pace for an interception a game. And the touchdowns is anywhere in the 20s. Take your pick, really. And he's not far from being on pace for that. He's a little under pace right now, but he's not far from being on pace with what he usually will get. Same thing with his yardage. I think he probably would be a little ahead of... he's really right around 4,500 typically. So he's having a very average year is really what it's coming down to. But with the run game not dominating and not being a number one running attack in the NFL, with the team not just scoring the amount of points they were scoring before, that really is what's causing the step back. And I definitely think that Sarkisian, he almost needed to take a little bit more ownership. Or the flip side is, can the Falcons, they can't do this, but can the Falcons be so bold as to say, something is wrong in the offense, get rid of this guy, let's get somebody else in here? And
this is where I was going to, you said earlier that I'm going to
mess admit up, that's extreme.
I'm going to mess up how you phrased it, but roll with me here. You said if anyone thinks they know what is wrong with this team, they don't know.
They're lying.
I am going to say on the other side, I do know what's wrong with this team.
You're lying.
You know what it is? Kyle Shanahan's not there. Like, you even look at it. He was there for 2 years. The first year, Dan Quinn coming in, he was also coming in. That 8-8 year, I'm looking at that as Dan Quinn was establishing his culture. Kyle Shanahan was establishing his offense. Also, I mean, you got to look at this. Kyle Shanahan was coming off of being with I think it was with Washington before he was with the Atlanta Falcons. Or no, he was with the Browns for that year in between. Yeah. So he was coming off of the Browns. So I'm looking at that, and this is part of a joke, this next part of he actually got to work with a real quarterback after working with the Browns and being like, whoa, there's nothing really to work with here. Then you look at that next year after the culture is set, but more importantly, after Kyle Shanahan had set Matt Ryan up in this offense, and yes, adding Coleman was a big fuse to that. I feel like he was like having that offense set was huge, and you can't this year just go, hey, you know what? I'm just going to take the keys to this and give it to you because it's not me running.
I don't necessarily think it's that simple, but I do think it's worth noting in 2015 with Shanahan coming in that was actually the second fewest touchdowns Matt Ryan had ever thrown in that year.
Do you think that
His
might have
rookie
become a
year-
new? Could that be because of a new offensive system
It's
and
possible.
a new head coach coming in at the same time?
It's possible, but his rookie year is the only year where he had less. It was one of his highest. It actually was his second highest interceptions ever thrown, and like his third lowest quarterback rating. But that's not as impressive of a number because it's just quarterback rating.
Yeah.
So
now it's all about. It is all about QBR.
people love the QBR nowadays. So, that first coming in is not the most impressive thing. It really, to me, is just the ownership of Matt Ryan not turning the ball over and throwing a shit ton of touchdowns. And there's a lot of benefits to that, benefits such as the run game being so dominant that people were terrified of it last year, which just opens things up for Matt Ryan, gives him a shit ton of time to throw the ball, allows him to find Julio Jones, which is a big deal, find Sanu, which is a big deal.
Their only touchdown from last week.
And there's quite a few things I think that just aren't working. It's not that this team is bad. It is not that anything is exactly wrong. It's just that this team is not functioning as well as they did before. And I guess when you really break it down, the team is just a slightly above average team, apparently, because when they're playing at this kind of baseline level, it's 3-3. It's just not at this absolute dominate the NFL expert level that we got last year.
Well, and this is a question that I want to turn on to you guys. Not only what do you think is wrong with the Falcons, but it was a question that Mark asked earlier in this segment of, do you think the Super Bowl is still in the Falcons' heads? Because I'm still thinking about it. Part of me wants to say yes. But then part of me is like, but they won their first 3 games. If you thought it was in their head, don't you think that they would have started off with losses?
But it could still be in your head once you start to lose, and then you just can't get it back.
Let's be honest. They should have lost that Bear game. I'm going to say that until I'm blue in the face.
They won the first half of the Super Bowl.
True.
So why can't they win the first half of the season?
True.
What's been played so far?
I'm surprised that, you know what the Patriots should have done? They should have
score 28 points.
No. They should have saved that whole Mark Wahlberg thing. Don't do that against the Chiefs. Do it this past Sunday against the Falcons, where you have the score up.
It
on
was
the
already
ticker tape.
tacky as hell. They didn't need to do it now.
Could you imagine if they did it against the Falcons? Like, hey, remember that?
They would have
when that
instantly
happened?
became the tackiest team ever.
But if they
in
came
all
out and beat
major
them
sports.
23, no, they just came out and beat them 23-7 and didn't let them score until late in the game. But you guys let us know what you think down below. What's wrong with the Falcons? Also, like I said, is the Super Bowl loss still in the Falcons' heads?